Hi, everybody. My name is Remy from Jethro, and today we're going to do our Jethro 3.0 sneak peek webinar. I have with me Boaz Raufman, our CTO, and Ellie Singer, and we're going to have a 15-minute Q&A at the end.
All right, everyone. My name is Ellie Singer. I'm the CEO of Jethro Data, based in New York City. And today we're going to share some great news with you about our version 3.0, all the great things we've been working about for the last, well, at least long months. I also have with me Boaz Raufman, is our co-founder and CTO. He'll do most of the presentation today. He'll take you through a demo of the new features and explanation of how they work. We're going to spend about 30 minutes on the presentation and leave 10 to 15 minutes for the Q&A. And if I can go to the next slide. Thanks. We'll start with just a couple of minutes of a high-level Jethro overview to orient everybody. The demo will include everywhere from installing a new Jethro instance, loading data, and then running Jethro on a large data set from Tableau. Will show how the interactiveness of Jethro works in real life. We'll cover 4 new great features that are going to be released hopefully by the end of this month. Our full automation of our Qlik technology, AutoCube technology, how we'll be able to load data directly from external sources like Hive tables, a brand new set of security features that would bring Jethro to enterprise level security, and a brand new management GUI of Jethro. With that, let me just take a minute or two and just orient everybody to what Jethro is and how we view our solution. We are focused on solving one problem and one problem only, and that is how to make BI work interactively on big data. We are not trying to solve all analytical problems or all big data problems. We only focused on making BI tools like Tableau, Qlik, Microstrategy, and so on work very fast on large data set in Hadoop or cloud storage. So what is Jethro good for? Any BI application, any data set size, any number of concurrent users, any data platform, all at interactive speed. If it's a BI application, we can make it run interactively. What makes Jethro very fast is the fact that we use a set of different features. We are fully indexing the data. We index every column. We automatically create and generate cubes for any repeatable aggregations, and we cache the results of every query that we go by. On top of that, we have a very intelligent optimizer that can choose the right technology and the right feature for the right query. So if a query is very filtered, very specific, then indexing will be the right solution for that query. If the query has no filtering at all, it's a repeatable query that just gets a total summary of the data, then our result caching will work very well because such queries are very repeatable. And if it's somewhere in between, then our AutoCube feature will kick in, and those repeatable query patterns will generate their own cubes and be able to leverage them live. What makes Jethro better than alternatives is simply that you don't need to manually do any data engineering. You don't have to define your own aggregations or build your own cubes or denormalize your data or repartition your data. All the things that you do right now trying to make up your BI work faster, you will no longer have to spend time on. Jethro is fully automated. And now with all of our security features and other enterprise features, management GUI, direct ingestion, we feel that Jethro is really coming of age. So last slide for me. The way we view Jethro in comparison to other tools and other alternatives, we basically think that you have 3 different approaches to making BI work on big data today. The first one is just simply point your BI tools at SQL on Hadoop tools like Impala or Hive or Drill, Presto, and so on. The challenge there is that those tools use full scan architecture. And as a result, pretty much most of your queries will have to go through this process and therefore be fairly slow. A new category of solution is cubes on Hadoop. And in this case, you will build cubes for some of your queries. Of course, you cannot build cubes for all of your queries. So those queries that can find a matching cube will use a cube and be fast. And those queries that don't have a cube will have to go to a full scan, Hive, Impala, and so on. Lastly, Jethro's approach, which completely eliminates full scan from the equation. We use a combination of cubes and indexes. Those queries that can match a cube will use a cube, and if not, we'll use an index to speed them up. So as a result, we can guarantee that all queries will run fast. And with that, I'll hand it over to Boaz to give us more details on the technology.
Hi everybody, this is Boaz Raufman, Jethro CTO. And today I want to go quickly through our great new features in Jethro 3.0 and show a demo of Jethro in action. So just quick overview of the new features of Jethro 3.0. First of all, we made many improvements to the AutoCube feature. I'm going to speak about it later in this webinar in details. We are now supporting enterprise-level security features, including LDAP authentication and object-level authorization. We have remade our load mechanism, and we are now allowing loading data directly from Hive and other external data sources into Jethro via simple and standard SQL select into commands. And one of our newest and greatest features is the Jethro Manager, which is a GUI application to manage Jethro instances and all Jethro management operations. So we're going to start with a quick demo. In this demo, we are going to show how we can set up a Jethro instance, a new Jethro instance, load data directly from Hive into Jethro, and analyze it within Tableau in 5 minutes. Next, we are going to go on a larger data set of 1.5 billion rows and see how we browse through it and interact with it and get response times of seconds. We are also going to build a new dashboard and show how AutoCubes and indexes are being created and trained as we work with the dashboard. And we are also going to demonstrate how cubes and indexes are self-maintained after a new data is loaded. So we are starting with creating a new Jethro instance based using the Jethro Manager. First thing I need to do, I'm choosing where the Jethro instance is going to be stored, where the Jethro tables, indexes, and cubes are going to be placed. And in this case, I'm going to use HDFS as my storage layer. Next step, choosing the location, the exact location of the stored Jethro instance within that storage. And the last step, I'm choosing to create a new instance, providing the instance name. I'll call that webinar. Providing a cache path, where Jethro is going to place cached files in the local server, setting the size. And that's about it. I just finished the instance creation procedure. It takes about a minute or so for Jethro to complete the instance creation. During this time, Jethro runs its initial setup, creates folder on the selected storage, it creates metadata, start services, and do all the initialization operations required to create the instance. Once this is completed, we are going to move to the next stage. And the next thing we are going to do is to create a table in Jethro and load data directly from Hive into this table. Here it is, the instance is ready. And I'm jumping directly to data load. I can load data from various data sources. In this case, I'm going to choose Hive. And I'm required, first of all, to provide a select statement which defines how I want to extract the data from Hive. So I've placed here a query, and I'm clicking Verify Query. And what's happened next is that we are going to get a preview of the data that we want to load from Hive. And with this preview, we can look at the data. We can make sure that this is indeed the data that we want to load. Highlighted here are the delimiters between the values, so we can see the exact values. We can see the column name in Hive. And if we are satisfied and this is the correct data, we are going to the next and final stage of mapping the data from Hive into a Jethro table. So on the left side, we see the source data, the source table from Hive with some sample of the values. And on the right side, we can choose to load data into an existing table. And in this case, since this is a new instance, we are going to choose to create a new table. Jethro automatically creates the most appropriate new table for us. It sets the column names according to the column names in Hive. It sets the data types according to the sample data from the Hive table. We can make some changes here if we want. We can, for example, decide that this column should not be float. Maybe we want it to be a double type. If we make a wrong choice in the data type, for example, if I take this string column and I accidentally choose an integer data type, I will immediately get a notification right here in the red arrow that I've made a wrong choice because the string values will not match integer data type. And so I probably want to fix that and change it back to string. There are other multiple options here to play with the data and play with data mapping to an existing table. And once I finish all the data mapping process, I just click on load. Oh, of course, I need to also provide a table name. I'll call it sales1. And off we go. So the load is starting. And while the load is starting, here it is. I'm skipping to the load manager. I move to the load manager. I can see that the load job is now starting. And while this is starting, I'm already opened my Tableau desktop, and I'm going to connect to the instance. I'm connecting to the Jethro ODBC driver, and I'm required to provide a few details, the IP of the query node, the port number, the instance name, which was webinar. I'm logging in using Jethro default user in this case. And Tableau is creating the connection, signing in. And while this is happening, we can go back to the Jethro load manager. We are seeing that the load is still in progress. We can look at the log status. We can look at the logs while this is happening. And the load now finished successfully. It's a pretty small load of about 1 million rows, so it's very fast. And now I'm here in Tableau. I'm already seeing the table that I've loaded called sales1. Skip into the worksheet, and that's it. I can start playing around with the data. Seeing 1 million rows here, choosing a city, choosing measures, choosing filters, and so on. And so in 5 minutes, I've created an instance, loaded data from Hive table into Jethro, connected Tableau to that instance in this table, and I can start analyzing and playing with the data. So this is great, but what we've seen here is a small sample. So let's look at something a little bit bigger. So what I have here is a Tableau dashboard that is connected to a Jethro table that has 1.5 billion rows. Pretty large table, and usually a big challenge for every tool that need to play with it and to analyze it. But let's see how Jethro can deal with that. So I'm start choosing different filters, choosing category, choosing year. I can choose specific countries here from the map. And as we can see, we are getting everything returns within seconds. This is for 1.5 billion rows. Now, what Jethro does here behind the scene is using the indexes and the AutoCubes that were generated for this dashboard to return results for every query in the most optimized way and get interactive experience to the business user and return results very, very fast. So this is the experience that Jethro will provide to the business users using Tableau or other BI tool on top of Jethro. A quick peek to what we call training mode. What happens when we start working with a new dashboard over Jethro? So I'm going to open here a new dashboard, choosing some dimensions, item size, and quantity. You see how fast I'm getting the results. And these results are coming back from the indexes on top of 1.5 billion rows. Now, most cases, indexes can return results pretty fast, but some scenarios are going to be more difficult. For example, if I, instead of selecting a specific year, selecting all the years except a specific year. And this query, when run on top of indexes, can take a little bit longer. In this case, it took like around 10 seconds. And probably the same thing will happen here if I choose uncheck item category. What happens behind the scenes is that Jethro intercepts the queries that are coming from Tableau, analyze those queries, and automatically generate cubes for some of those queries. So as we build the dashboard and we add dimensions and measures and filters, while this is happening, cubes are being generated behind the scenes. Nobody needs to do anything. Nobody needs to build them manually. And now, in this case, after a minute or so, we will expect to get even faster response time for those queries. So right now, the queries are still being resolved from the indexes. And as you can see now, I'm getting everything returned within less than a second because the cubes already been generated for me. So this is what we call the training mode. This is what happens when you start to build a new dashboard or you apply an existing dashboard over a Jethro instance. All you have to do is to work with your dashboard. Everything is being generated for you. The last thing I want to demonstrate is how to handle a very important challenge of handling data changes or incremental data. So I'm going back to my initial dashboard, uncheck all my choices, and we can see that I have about 1.5 billion rows. Let's just focus on the rows. And what I'm going to do here, in the background, I'm sending a load job that will load 100,000 new rows into this table. And what we expect to see here, what Jethro is going to do, is going to handle it in a very transparent way, and the users that are using the dashboard will still maintain the interactive response times even when new data is loaded into the system. Unlike other tools that are based on cubes, the Jethro cubes can work incrementally. A query that comes and can hit a cube and merge the cube with a delta, with the new data that was loaded. And so we still return the results very, very fast. So let's see, the data is already loaded. And now we have 1,534 and 400,000 rows. And now it jumped to 500,000. We loaded 100,000 rows. Going back to my dashboard, new data is loaded, and yet, as I interact with the dashboard, I'm still getting everything returned to me within seconds. In the background, Jethro uses the cubes. It runs incremental queries and also update the cubes for future use. So that's more or less the last part of the demonstration. And as you can see, we very easily were able to set up a new instance, load data, interact this data and larger data sets with Tableau to Jethro within seconds, build new dashboard and train Jethro in a very transparent way without any manual data engineering. And we also seen how Jethro automatically maintains its cubes and indexes following data change and incremental loads. So going back quickly on the principles and the important points about Jethro AutoCubes. There are two things we need to know. We need to know about cubes. First thing, it's fully automated. Cubes are being auto-generated. No manual definition is required. Cubes are highly flexible. They support very complex functions, including count distincts, complex expressions with case and ifs and join. You can throw it, the Jethro cubes, any complex dashboard that you have, and we can handle it. And cubes are self-maintained. Data changes, incremental loads are all handled behind the scenes by the cube mechanism without manual maintenance or manual operations. The second important thing to know about cubes are complementary to indexes. Cubes are a great solution, but they also have dark side. If the cubes get too big, they become unusable and inefficient. And so solutions that are based on cubes only will have very big difficulty to handle complex scenarios with high cardinality columns or with dashboards that have large number of dimensions. Indexes, on the other hand, shine when you need to filter on high cardinality columns or when you have multiple dimensions in the filter. So combination of cubes and index is a winning formula that enable interactive response times for all scenarios. Moving forward to a quick scan of the additional new features of Jethro 3.0. In Jethro 3.0, we introduced the concept of external table. External table is a table that is mapped to a real table in an external data source, such as Hive or other databases or other SQL engine. In the upcoming version 3, Jethro will include native support for mapping external table to Hive data source, and future releases will support additional external data sources, such as other SQL engines on Hadoop, HDFS files, and also other databases. Jethro connector is the element that implements the connectivity and the data fetch from the external data source. And one of the nice things about this element, about the Jethro connector, is that it's provided as an open framework so that anyone can implement his own connector to any data source by implementing a set of methods based on the open connector interface. This is a pretty cool feature, and we expect to see many connectors implementations become available as we release Jethro Open Connector. Loading data to Jethro from an external table is as simple as using standard insert into select SQL command. And everything is done based on the external table and select into, everything is done from SQL client. So it eliminates the need to use command line Jethro loader, and it enables highly flexible data extraction and data transformation using full SQL functionality. Let's see how we load data from an external table in 3 simple steps. First step, we create an external data source. In this example, we define Hive external data source and we provide the URI and the credential. Second step, we create an external table in Jethro mapped to Hive table using external data source defined in step 1. And the last step, simply issue a standard insert into select command that insert the Hive rows into the Jethro table. Very quick, very easy, and very powerful and flexible capability. Moving to our next new feature, security. In Jethro 3.0, we added support for LDAP-based authentication. The setup is very flexible and support any kind of LDAP server. Fine-grained selection of LDAP user that allowed to authenticate with Jethro and LDAP group to be used for the authentication can be defined using the configuration of the LDAP server connection. The authorization model in 3.0 is a standard database authorization model similar to the model available in Hive or Impala or Sentry or Ranger. Using standard SQL ground revoke command, we can define permission and map it to roles and groups. Jethro 3.0 also includes powerful audit tools where each audit event is logged both into log files and into Jethro system table, and so you can issue complex audit event analysis via SQL statements. Few words about the authorization and authentication model. On the right side, we can see the object hierarchy, where each table of view belongs to a scheme and each scheme belongs to an instance. A permission is granted to an object, applies also to its descending objects. And a permission on an object is mapped to a role. The roles are mapped to a group, and the groups, which are defined in the LDAP directory, are mapped within the directory to the user. And so user will be allowed to access an object if the permission to the object is mapped to his or her group via the group roles. And again, this is a very standard security model, and it allows full control onto which user and which group can access each object at every level. And moving to our last topic, Jethro Manager. Jethro Manager is our great new GUI application for management and monitor all Jethro activities. Version 1 of Jethro GUI focused on instance creation and data loads, as we have seen in the demo. And future version will cover a wide range of capabilities, including setting up scheduled loads, resource monitor, cluster and instance management, queries monitor and control, configuration, security, cube monitor, and many more. So this is about it. A quick overview of 3.0 and a demonstration of the capabilities. And I'm handing it back to you, Eli.
All right, thanks, Boaz. So this was a pretty it's a complete overview of what we are about to release in version 3.0. Just wanted to mention that Jethro is really easy to get started with. You can download Jethro from our site and self-evaluate it. We provide free 45-day trial and full support. You can test Jethro on-premise or in the cloud, AWS, Azure, GCP. And Jethro works with every Hadoop distribution and pretty much most commercial BI tools. So it's really very flexible to use, both in terms of trying it and later in production. And with that, we wanted to open up to our Q&A. Any questions that you might have, we have a few minutes left for that. I have one question for you, Boaz, here. It's about cubes can become very large and hard to maintain. How are you dealing with that?
Okay, great question. So first of all, in Jethro, we limit the size of the cube, and we focus on creating large number of smaller cubes rather than creating large and unmaintainable cubes. Cubes can become large if the query has large number of dimensions. This is something you usually see where the dashboard has large number of filters and many of the filters are selected. And at a certain point, it is true that you cannot create the cube or you cannot use the cube anymore because the potential cube will be too big. But this is exactly the point where Jethro will not create a cube because the indexes will provide the performance by filtering on those high cardinality or large number of dimensions. So it's always a game of balance between creating a reasonable size cube and maintaining them when it makes sense and using the indexes when it doesn't make sense to use the cubes.
Great, thanks. Another question is about loading time. You only loaded 1 million rows, and that took very little time. How long would it take to load, say, a terabyte of data?
Okay, I think I probably prefer to measure this in terms of number of rows and number of columns. So just to give an estimation, loading a table that has around 30 columns is usually done in a rate of about 100 to 200,000 rows per second. And while loading, Jethro is already creating columns and code the data, create indexes and create all the metadata. And more or less in 100 to 200,000 rows a second can be a little bit faster if you have more resources. Of course, when number of columns grow, this affects the loading speed. But usually on most data sets, even the initial load in Jethro will complete within a couple of hours. And then we have the ongoing incremental loads, which usually are much smaller. And we can handle use cases where incremental data is loaded every 15 minutes, and we can still complete the cycle as the load is fast enough to handle that.
Great. A couple of questions I can answer. There was a question about other BI tools. Jethro works, of course, not only with Tableau, we work very well with Qlik, Microstrategy, and several other tools, but these would be the main ones that Jethro is usually used by customers. We have another question about training cube. Let me read it this way. Do you have traces and CLI or tools that would help in automatic training of cubes? So I think that the answer for that is that you don't really need to manually force that process. By running queries, just simple SQL queries, Jethro monitors all queries that go through it, of course, and will try to build cubes pretty much for every query that it sees. As was mentioned, the limitation is that it would only create very small cubes. So if you want to instigate or Jethro training, you just send the queries from your own SQL client, so you don't really need to a special CLI for that. Another question is about timeframe for 3.0. We expect it to be released by the end of this month. There's a question about, sorry, go ahead.
Adding one comment to your previous question, Jethro does provide tools to manually create cube if the user wish to do so, but in most cases this is not required as the cube auto generation is a very efficient and powerful process and will do the work for you.
Excellent. A question about Jethro pricing. So Jethro pricing is based on Jethro servers. What that means is that we don't price by how much data you have. We don't price by how many Hadoop nodes you have. We don't price by how many BI users you have. The only thing that we charge for are those Jethro servers. And you would have more than one server if you want to support growing concurrency. So the more concurrent queries you'll have, the more Jethro servers you will need. The cost of the price for a Jethro server, it's a subscription model, and it's $30,000 per year. So 3 Jethro servers, about $90K per year, will be able to handle a couple of good-sized BI applications with several hundred active users quite easily. I'm not sure if I answered that one, but the timeframe for version 3.0 is the end of this month. And I think that's currently the questions that we have, or the time that we had. So I want to thank all of you for joining us for the great questions, and we look forward to following up with all of you. So thanks again, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everybody.